Another very interesting thing about a young man. There was a young man who had applied for a job. He'd gone for the interview. He cleared a written test. He cleared an interview. And then he was to have a meeting with the director of a company, the company where he was being interviewed. The director looked at his CV and said, "Wow, you've done extremely well in your studies, year after year. Tell me, young man, you went to a very good institution. Who paid for it? Did you get a scholarship?" He said, "No, sir, I didn't get any scholarships." "So your father paid all this money for you to study well?" He said, "No, sir, I lost my father when he was 1 year old. When I was 1 year old, sorry." He said, "Then how did it happen?" He said, "No, sir, my mother earned all this money and paid for my education." "What does your mother do?" the director asked. He said, "Sir, what a coincidence. It's like the previous story. My mother washes clothes of people in the neighborhood, and she's been doing it all these years so that I could study." The director put on his glasses and said, "Young man, open your hands, open your palms, let me see your hands." When the young man opened his hands, the director saw that the hands were soft, the hands were very clean, and the hands were something which had never done anything in life except probably comb his hair or have his breakfast. He told him, "Look, young man, I like you. You've done well in academics. You seem like an honest man. But I want you to do one thing, and I'm not going to talk to you until you've done it. You can come back tomorrow after doing this. When you go back home this evening, hold your mother's hand in your hand. Better still, wash your mother's hand." The young man, naukri ka sawal tha. That was the motivation. He went. Got hold of his mother's hand. His mother was surprised. He had never done this before in his life, or in her life. He found that her hands were wrinkled, knots, lots of knots, and the hands of a lady much older than she actually was. He washed her hands. She was crying because she couldn't believe what was happening, and he was crying because he had learned his lesson. He came back next day to the director. The director asked him, "So, what did you see?" He said, "Sir, I felt my mother's hands in mine." "Okay, tell me, what else did you see?" "I washed her hands." "No, tell me, what happened to you? What thoughts crossed your mind?" He said, "Sir, I realized one thing, that people make great sacrifices to make things happen. And nothing comes easy in life. Someone works hard so that someone else can do well in life. My mother has sacrificed her entire life for me, and I realized that." "What else did you realize?" I said, "Sir, I realized one thing, that there is nothing called a smaller job or a bigger job, that every job is worth doing and worth doing well. Had she been something else, she probably wouldn't have earned enough money for me to come through college and sit there in front of you." The director said, "Look, I don't mind that you haven't worked hard so far. I'm happy that you've learned your lessons. You're hired." The lesson here, I think, is don't get worked up about how you're beginning your career. Don't get het up about what your visiting card is going to say. Life is a long-distance race. Your visiting card is going to say a lot of things over a period of time, but you must know where to start from. Most people know Robert Frost's poem, "Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening." You all know it. And everybody, when I ask them, "Can you recite the poem?" they're going to say, "The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep." And then I ask them, "Do you know the first 4 lines?" Very few people know the first 4 lines. Do you know what it means? We know where we want to reach. We know we want to run. We know we want to make sacrifices. We want to put aside everything else to succeed in life, but we don't know how to begin. Now, how to begin is exactly what I'm telling you right now, about learning joyfully, about enjoying the journey, and about developing that attitude of gratitude.